Good Saturday morning, ABC 10 meteorologist Brenden Mincheff here with the latest on Hurricane Hilary as it continues its march north towards California. Here's what it looks like as of about 8:30 Pacific time this morning on satellite. And one of the things that immediately jumps out to you, overnight, you notice how it has started to weaken, especially this morning. Now you've got this big gap in the clouds here. This is likely because Hilary, the storm, is starting to pull in some of that cooler, more stable air as it moves further north. Remember that sea surface temperature starting to cool off at this point, so that abundant moisture, abundant warm, moist air that it had for the last couple days is starting to run out a little bit. It is also getting pretty close to the coast, and that's going to create some effects, some frictional forces and some shearing effects with the storm as it approaches the coast and those mountains of the Baja Peninsula. So let's jump into the latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center for Hurricane Hilary. Winds are now down to 125 mile per hour sustained. That means it has dropped from a Category 4 to a Category 3. It is moving north-northwest now at 16 miles per hour, so that is north of northwest. So if this is northwest, that's kind of north-northwest, and it is going to really parallel the coast for the next 12 to 24 hours and then really start to turn north and make it straight towards Southern California. Pressure is up to 947 now, so it held together pretty nicely overnight, maintained that Category 4 status, but now this morning, well, again, with the latest advisory, that's 9 a.m. Mountain Time, so that's 8 a.m. Pacific Time. That 8 a.m. advisory has now dropped it to a Category 3. Winds starting to come down more as well, and that pressure is rising. Those are all signs that the hurricane is starting to deteriorate. But even though it will continue to do so over whatever time it has left as it goes in towards Southern California and into Northern California, that rain still has to go somewhere. It doesn't just disappear. So even as those categories are starting to come down, even as those winds are starting to come down and the pressure rises, that rain is still going to be there. That humidity is still going to be there. That wind, especially for Southern California, is still going to be there. This is to say nothing, by the way, of the Baja Peninsula, which is in that tropical storm warning and then hurricane warning as you get a little bit further to the north. Let's go ahead and take a look at the cone. I've also overlaid the wind field. So the orange circle here is the hurricane force winds, which you see are actually pretty constricted to the center of the storm. The yellow are the tropical storm force winds. Now, as the storm decays, what will likely happen is the tropical storm force wind field will actually get bigger. It expands because it's no longer rapidly rotating around that center. And again, as it starts to deteriorate, that wind field will expand a little bit, which has bigger impacts for Southern California and also Baja. You saw that there. So as it drops from a Category 3 to Category 2, as it approaches the Baja Peninsula and likely to make at least a brief landfall there, notice how that wind field expanded. And so don't focus on the center of the cone. Center of the cone is only for the center of the storm. We are talking about impacts here, right? Who is going to feel what? It's not just what's inside the cone. It's really the entire wind field where we're going to see those primary wind effects, and even into Southern California as well. You can see as it shears, or as it starts to deteriorate, that wind field starts to shift a little bit to the east as it's getting harder to wrap that moisture over the peninsular ranges of Baja and Southern California. So again, that primary wind threat is likely going to be from about San Diego to the east. So places, even though Los Angeles is now in that tropical storm warning, which we'll talk more about in a second, there's likely to be a little bit less effects there, at least overall. Now, in the mountains near LA, for sure, because that terrain will enhance some of those wind speeds. But, you know, we'll continue to talk about that through this update. But you can see, as we go in towards landfall Sunday morning, and this says Sunday night, but really that track is sped up a little bit. So landfall near San Diego around Sunday morning, at least certainly that's when that tropical storm force wind field will start to be there. It'll also continue to track off to the north, maybe holding together a little bit of rotation into Nevada. But again, now we're going to be talking about the Sierra Nevada mountain range, where it's going to be hard to wrap that moisture around, hard to wrap that wind, whatever's left of it, around as well. Although it will still have those impacts in Northern California, and we will still notice that something is different here in Northern California. We'll talk details in just a second. So here's where we stand right now. Category 3 storm. Again, you can kind of see that where that drier, more stable air is getting pulled into the storm now because with that kind of lack of convection, if you will. So Category 3 will weaken further for multiple reasons, as we just kind of touched on. Southern California impacts, tropical storm impacts still expected. That tropical storm warning is in effect. Wind, rain, and flooding as well. Flooding will be a big deal in Southern California, not just along the coast, but especially into the deserts as well. Here in Northern California, impacts will be Monday. So SoCal's impacts will be Sunday. Our impacts will be Monday. Breezy conditions, rain chances, definitely humid as well. So let's take a look at sea surface temperatures. Now, the hurricane for the last couple of days was in this 86-degree Fahrenheit sea surface temperature. That is great. That is what allows a hurricane to strengthen very quickly. It's all surface hurricane fuel. You need at least 80-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Well, now, as we talked about, that storm is crossing into cooler waters, about 77 degrees Fahrenheit where it is now. That is not enough to sustain the strength that the hurricane has had. That's why we've seen that weakening. Even though it's approaching the coast, not quite there, we're starting to get some of those terrain impacts with the storm over the next 24 hours or so. But the primary factor right now is the fact that it's in cooler waters. As it continues to ride up the peninsula towards Southern California, that water temp is going to drop towards 70 degrees. And at that point, that hurricane is definitely going to be rapidly weakening because it is not able to pull up a lot of warm water. As we look at the spaghetti models, there is still some really good consensus. You don't see a lot of spread, right? You don't see some going out that way. You don't see some going out this way. All of the models are really right along the peninsula into Southern California. So there is great consensus as to where the storm is going. Even as it starts to decay and work its way up to the north, there is still some really good consensus. We don't see a lot of spread. We don't see a lot of variation. So at this point, there is high confidence in the track of this storm. Things can shift. Look, if it's going to take a path more to the east like this, we're going to see even less rain, less wind. If it comes in a little bit more westerly, closer to Reno, we're going to see maybe a little bit more rain and a little bit more wind as well. So even though the margin of error here is not as great as it was a couple days ago, there are still enough variations in the data to impact what we will see in Northern California. Again, we will talk exact details just a little bit later in this video. But the reason why the storm is headed where it is, we got a strong high pressure sitting over the Great Plains right now, and we've got a low pressure that is just kind of pinwheeling off the coast of California. And then there's the hurricane. So there's really only one way for it to go, and that is in between the two. So it's going to literally get pulled right up alongside the low pressure and off into Nevada. That's why it is headed where it is headed. Here are the alerts at this hour. Tropical storm warning, the first ever. Yesterday we had the first ever tropical storm watch. Well, now that has been upgraded to a warning. So first ever tropical storm warning for Southern California, San Diego, Oceanside, Palm Springs, Irvine, Los Angeles, Anaheim. I mean, you name it. Any city right along the coast is in that warning at this point. Even some inland areas and on the east side of the mountains, we've got some cities in there as well. So important to take this seriously, but it's not just the wind. Even more important is the water. There's a flood watch out for Southern California as well. I'm going to zoom out actually because it's not just Southern California. Look at this all the way from the international border in Arizona and Southern California up into Nevada, almost the entire state of Nevada in a flood watch, parts of Utah in a flood watch, even extending up into Oregon and Idaho, because this is how much moisture there is in this storm. Even though it's not going to be a hurricane, even though it won't be a tropical storm, by the time it gets into Nevada, it will still be an impactful system because of all the rain that will be pulled up this way. And remember, a lot of this country is desert. And so when you add 5 inches plus of tropical moisture across a large swath of this region, especially in the deserts of Southern California, that will create a lot of runoff, a lot of flash flooding. Burn scars are likely to see some flooding as well. Potentially, we could see some mudslides as well, some debris flow in some of those burn scars. So again, even though we kind of talk about the wind, we talk about it's a tropical storm, it's a hurricane, even more importantly is the water, the amount of rain that is headed this way. We get atmospheric rivers in the wintertime here in California. That's where we get the most of our moisture. Those are tropical systems by nature. This is also a tropical system, so it is bringing a lot of rain with it. It is important to acknowledge that fact. In fact, there's an excessive rainfall outlook of a level 4 high risk. That's as high as it goes, 4 out of 4 on the east side of the peninsular ranges in Southern California. For much of the deserts as well, Death Valley is likely to see twice the amount of its average annual rainfall in just a couple of days as this system tracks on north. So you can kind of even see, even if we didn't look at the cone, even if we didn't look at the spaghetti models, you can kind of see where the storm is going based on where the highest threat for flash flooding is. And in this level 4 area, that's a 70% chance at least of a flash flood occurring in this region. So if you're in Southern California, if you're in the Inland Empire, if you're in Imperial, if you're in Yuma, Arizona, even if you're near Las Vegas, if you know anybody here, send them a text message, give them a call, let them know, hey, you might not get the wind, but you're going to get the rain, and this is a big deal. You got to take it seriously, folks. Seriously, this is a lot of rain, and in August, we simply don't get rain like this in California. It just does not happen, certainly not all at once like what we're about to see. Here is model rainfall totals. There were some discrepancies between these two. This is the American model. We'll show you the European in a second. If you remember a couple of days ago, there was some discrepancy. Now, that's the GFS. This is the Euro. You can see they look almost exactly the same. The bulk of that rainfall going through Southern California, maybe even into parts of the Southern Sierra foothills, and then into Nevada as well. Here in Northern California, our total rainfalls have come down from where they were on Thursday, but there is still a chance we see up to ½ an inch in the valley. But again, it depends on the exact track that this storm takes. So here's radar as of about 8:40 this morning, and you can see there's already some rain out there, especially in the deserts into Yuma as well. This is not directly associated with the storm. This is just the first bit of that moisture plume getting pulled up in between that high and the low pressure. So folks, if you're in Southern California, today is the day to prepare, especially if you're in San Diego, especially if you're in LA. You're not seeing the rain right now. You'll see it later today, but this is the time now. If you have any last minute preparations, you need to go get batteries, whatever it may be, now is the time to do that. And I'm not trying to scare anyone, not trying to hype anything up here, but you don't want to be out on the roads tomorrow. You want to be in your safe place, kind of hunkered down, because tomorrow is when that main event starts. So as we look at the storm timeline here, today that first round of rain arrives, like we talked about on radar just a second ago. We're already seeing some of that rain there, locally breezy conditions with some of these thunderstorms and showers as well. By the time you go to sleep tonight, if you're in Southern California, you need to be done with your preparations. So you need to be where you're going to be for the duration of the storm, which as it kind of speeds up will be just Sunday. But you need to be where you're going to be, and you need to just call it good after today. That's all you can do. What you get done today, what you have today is what you will have through the tropical event tomorrow, because the tropical storm force winds arrive about 8 to 10 a.m. in Southern California tomorrow morning. So that does not leave really any time tomorrow to get anything done. That's why I say, I'm going to stress it again, you need to be done with your preparations by the time you go to sleep tonight if you're in Southern California. If you have family in Southern California, you have friends in Southern California, give them a call, give them a text message, let them know, hey, you need to be done with whatever you're going to do today. You got to be done with it by the time you go to sleep. Tomorrow, those winds arrive early in the morning. The main event, the heaviest rain, the strongest winds, and the greatest flood potential all occur from lunchtime through the evening hours on Sunday. Once that's all done, and when we get to Monday, those remnants move out pretty quick. This storm is going to pick up speed as it gets kind of forced between the high and the low. And so that rain and that wind will end very, very early in the day, in the early morning hours on Monday, and then it becomes a Northern California problem. So this is for Southern California specifically. Can't stress this enough. Sunday is a no-go. Don't do anything on Sunday except stay home unless you're told to leave by local officials, because you're going to get those winds, sustained winds of 40 to 60 miles per hour, potentially higher in the mountains because of those terrain effects. Gusts could be higher than 60 miles per hour in Southern California. The rainfall rates are going to be very high for this time of year. So not only is it going to be raining, it's going to be raining very heavily, and that will lead to a flood risk as well. And that is especially true if you are in the deserts tomorrow. So just be where you're going to be, pay attention to the weather. That's all you can do. Here in Northern California, our day is Monday, and our impacts will not be as great as what Southern California will see, but we will still have impacts. The thing everybody will notice, regardless of whether you see rain or not, regardless of whether you feel the breeze or not, is the humidity. It's going to be feeling very tropical. There's a lot of moisture that's going to be moving through this part of the United States, and it will be sticky, especially Monday. Rain chances, 30 to 60% chance in the valley. Really, that goes from west to east. So the lesser rain chances are the closer you are to the Pacific coast. Closer you are to the Sierra, the higher rain chances are. This is dependent on the track of the storm. We don't have a lot of margin of error here. We don't have a lot of variation in those models. It's really good consensus. So it's not like we're going to see something completely unexpected. But if that storm tracks a little closer to the Sierra as opposed to right over central Nevada, our rain chances go up. Our potential total rainfalls go up as well. That is what I mean by track dependent. If you're in the Sierra, your rain chances on Monday are almost guaranteed. We are almost certainly going to see rain. I mean, a 95% chance that it will rain anywhere in the Sierra on Monday. Now, the wind, breezy as the remnants pass by, 20 to 30 miles per hour, but it's not going to be anything like what Southern California is going to see. So we're going to start with our wind tracker in Northern California Saturday night. This is 7 p.m. We get a delta breeze developing, very standard weather pattern. We're not going to see these impacts. We're not even going to feel that there's a change on the way for Saturday. So if you're Northern California on Saturday, highs are going to be in the mid to upper 90s. Get whatever done you want to do. It's a normal day for us in Northern California. Sunday, things do start to change, and we'll notice that because I expect we'll see a more subdued delta breeze because now with Hilary in Southern California making its way up to the north pretty quickly, it is going to influence our wind flow. And notice we've got some north winds, especially along the coastal range and then the west side of the valley. Now, these are typically drier winds, so there is a brief window where we could see a higher than usual fire danger, but we're going to follow that up pretty quickly with some rain chances and very moist southerly winds. And you'll see that flip here, but I do want to stress Sunday evening, you notice we've got those easterly winds through the Sierra. We've got those northerly winds in the valley. This is unusual. This is a sign that the storm is approaching because of the way the rotation works. It's wrapping around the storm like this. That's why we've got those northerly winds. On Monday, as that storm approaches to our east, now as it passes through, we've got those southerly winds. Notice they're strong in the valley as it moves on through. This is early Monday morning, about 4 a.m. on Monday. And those gusts, 20 to 30 miles per hour, this is going to be a very humid wind as well, very tropical wind as it moves on through because of all that moisture. So even if it doesn't actively rain, it will feel sticky outside in Northern California. I'm going to show your futurecast. I'm going to preface this by saying I think the rain coverage in Northern California will be greater than what it is suggesting. Normal coverage on Saturday for the most part with those shower and thunderstorm opportunities in the Sierra. That continues through Saturday night. Sunday in the Sierras, when we do start to see a little bit of that change, as even early in the day on Sunday, we do have some shower chances. But by Sunday evening, that's when that best chance of rain starts to move in, especially for the high country. Definitely cloud cover in the valley. And again, a likely humid atmosphere starting to build in by the time we get to Sunday evening. So Monday morning, again, I think we're going to see a little bit more coverage, especially in the southern valley into the foothills as it all passes through, but it does depend on the track. So this is what it looks like as of early Sunday morning. But you do see some pretty good rain chances in the valley, especially from, I would say, I-5 to the east are those best rain chances. Again, the closer you are to the Pacific coast, the less chance of rain you're seeing. If you're in San Francisco, there's a chance you might not see any rain at all outside of a stray shower or two. The chance of rain in the Bay Area about 10 to 20%. But once you get into the valley, again, from I-5 to the east, better chances of rain ranging from about 50 to 70% chance. And then if you're in the high country, yeah, you're definitely going to see some rain Sunday night and Monday as well. And then we've got those thunderstorm chances popping up yet again Monday evening, late afternoon, evening in the high country with some of these possible in the valley as well. Depends on the track. I'm kind of repeating myself a lot here because there is still a lot here that depends on the exact track when we talk about impacts to Northern California. This is for Monday. We're still talking about storms 48 hours out. So it's important to keep that in mind. It's not like this is going to happen in 12 hours, not like it's going to happen tonight. So there is still time for these exact details, placement of storms, how much we're going to see, rain totals. Still time for that to change in Northern California. I think the impacts are very much set at this point for Southern California, but for us here in Northern California, we still have some window for things to move around and change just a little bit. In terms of rainfall totals, my thinking right now has stayed pretty much the same since about Thursday, although the highest end rain totals are coming down, especially in the valley. So depending on track, I'm going to say it again, depending on track, 1/10 of an inch to 1/2 an inch of rain, again, from I-5 east into the foothills, up to about 1/2 an inch of rain. If you go west of I-5 towards the coast, we're looking at 1/10 of an inch or less. The rain chances there are just not very good. It's going to be pretty far away from where the center of that storm is. Doesn't mean it's not going to rain, just means the rain chances and therefore the rain totals are less. As you work into the high country, up to about 2 inches, places near Yosemite, further to the south and further to the east, certainly could see a lot more rain than just 2 inches. We could be talking 3 to 4 inches, but generally across the high country, up to about 2 inches of rain. And especially in the valley, you know what Sacramento's average rainfall is for August? 0.02 of an inch. So even if we see the very bare minimum low end number I've got here on this map, which is 1/10 of an inch, that is more than 100%. That's more like 400% of our average rainfall for the month of August. So important to keep this in mind. This might not look like much for November or December or January, certainly. I agree with that. But for August, this is definitely something, folks. All right. That's where we stand in terms of the Hilary update. Look, if this is your first tropical system, which for many people here in California, it likely is, unless you lived in the Gulf Coast or right along the East Coast, maybe North Carolina, something like that. It's probably your first tropical system. I grew up in Florida. I went through some of these hurricanes, some of these storms that were stronger than this one. I will tell you that that part of the country is used to this kind of thing happening, right? Floridians, Texans, people that live anywhere along the Gulf Coast, in the Carolinas, and even to some degree in New England are used to this kind of thing happening. We're somewhat familiar with these events as we get these atmospheric river events, but this is a different beast, right? This is going to be coming from the south. It's going to be changing our wind patterns. So it's okay if you're a little unsure of things, but I advise you to listen to officials. I advise you to listen to the meteorologists. I appreciate you watching. If you live in Southern California, if you watch them as well, listen to those meteorologists. They're all very good. It's important to take the storm seriously because these simply don't happen. The last time Southern California was impacted by a tropical system was 1939, September 1939. And Southern California as a whole, if you kind of count the deserts down there with storms that kind of crept up through the Gulf of California, that was 1970 with Nora. And there's never been a tropical storm watch or warning, certainly never been a hurricane watch or warning for Southern California until this one. This is the first time we've had these tropical storm watches and warnings issued. So look, just listen to local officials. Be prepared in much the same way you would be prepared for an atmospheric river event. Power outages are possible with some of these winds. Flooding is possible, as we talked about. It'll be heavy rain. Just plan on being home on Sunday, right? Many of us don't have to go to work on Sunday. That's great, right? Just cancel those leisure activities, cancel those trips to the store. Get that stuff done now. Get it done on Saturday. If you can wait, go ahead and get it done on a Monday or Tuesday. The storm's going to be moving very quickly. So by the time we get to the middle and end of this coming week, we're really not going to be seeing, certainly in Southern California by Wednesday, we're not going to be seeing more rain and more wind from the storm. It's really just confined for Southern California to Sunday with lingering impacts early Monday. And in Northern California, these impacts are going to be Monday with lingering impacts into Tuesday. Simple as that. Just treat it like any other storm. Listen to the officials, listen to the meteorologists, take it seriously, be safe, but also important not to be over worried about it. Trust in your preparations, trust in the officials, and trust in the forecasts of this storm. Doesn't happen very often. Can't stress it enough. So we're all living through a little bit of history here in California, and let's just appreciate this moment and take it seriously. That's all I have to say with this update. Download the ABC 10 app on your Apple TV, ABC 10 Plus app on your Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV. It's free. You can watch us anytime, live, local, always on. We've got a weather playlist with in-depth forecasts like this one, weather specials that the meteorologists here at ABC 10 have done, and of course, the latest on Hurricane Hilary. Thanks for watching.